Strip the software off one and the branding off the other, and the same machine is sitting underneath. Everyone pays in. Something is taken off the top. A handful walk out with the pot, and the majority who funded them go home holding a receipt. It makes no difference whether the pot is denominated in pounds or in a token minted 3 weeks ago by a team with cartoon avatars. The arithmetic is fixed before the first ticket is sold. What comes out is less than what went in, by exactly the size of the rake. That is the whole instrument. Everything else is theater. The National Lottery is the original crypto gamble. Everything since has been a re-implementation running on faster rails. Begin with the accounting, because the accounting is where the two instruments are most often confused. A market is zero-sum at the level of the individual trade. Every gain is a transfer, every profit mirrored by somebody's surrender. And it becomes negative sum once fees, spreads, and slippage are paid out of the pool. The lottery skips that sequence entirely. It is negative sum by statute before a single transaction has occurred, at a magnitude nobody can compete away. The extraction is not an emergent property of participation. It was written into the license. Now apply the efficiency argument. I have argued in the invisible balance that Pareto efficiency in markets has teeth. An edge evaporates the moment it is widely recognized, attention consumes advantage, and profit belongs to anticipation rather than confirmation. Follow that principle to its limit and the lottery appears at the end of it. Every participant holds identical information. A numbered ball carries no history, no order flow, no balance sheet, no signal of any kind. There is nothing to anticipate because there is nothing to know. Expected value is identical for every player at every moment, permanently, by design. That property belongs to the drum and to nothing else. The drum is efficient. The arrangement around the drum is a statutory monopoly with a takeout fixed by license, immune to competition, incapable of being undercut, structurally unable to improve. A perfectly efficient game is being sold inside a perfectly uncompetitive market, and the single place where price pressure might plausibly reduce the toll is the one place competing is illegal. Efficiency describes the impossibility of advantage between players. It says nothing whatsoever about the party standing outside the game holding the float, which makes the lottery something more useful than an analogy. It is a controlled experiment. In Why Most Must Lose, I argued that even under conditions of perfect equality, same capital, same tools, same information, the Pareto curve reasserts itself because participants bring unequal cognition, patience, discipline, and risk tolerance, and those differences compound across cycles into a long tail of loss and a thin upper tier of gain. The lottery lets us test the claim by deletion. Remove skill, remove speed, remove capital advantage, information advantage, emotional regulation, execution quality, every human variable the argument rested on. What remains is a system where the outcome distribution is more extreme than any market, a handful of enormous winners and millions of complete losses, drawn from a population with no differentiating characteristics at all. The curve survives the removal of every explanation usually offered for it, which means the curve was never produced by the differences between participants. It is a property of the payout architecture, and the human variance merely decorates it. That is the foundational claim, and it travels. When you look at an altcoin distribution and see the same shape, a few wallets holding almost everything, a long tail holding dust, the temptation is to explain it in terms of conviction, research, timing, courage. The lottery demonstrates that no such explanation is required. Build a payout structure that concentrates, and it will concentrate, whether the participants are analysts or pensioners choosing birthdays. And there is a second class of participant which matters more than either. I have written that the most consistent winners are frequently the ones who are not trading at all. The exchanges earning on volume rather than accuracy, the brokers earning the spread rather than the direction, the educators earning subscriptions rather than returns. They sell the tools, charge the tolls, and rent the lanes, and they engineer their position to sit atop the distribution rather than inside it. The lottery operator is the pure and final form of that class. It has collapsed the exchange, the broker, the market maker, and the educator into a single licensed entity that takes its cut before the game begins, cannot lose, faces no competitor, and is protected by criminal statute from anyone attempting to offer the same product more cheaply. Every structural critique I have made of intermediaries applies here in undiluted form, and here alone it arrives with a royal warrant on the packaging. Set the altcoin market beside it. The pitch is the exact inverse. Be early, do your research, read the contract, find the thing nobody has noticed, inefficiency is available, and edge is purchasable through effort. Look at what actually determines outcomes, and the retail buyer at listing occupies precisely the position of the ticket holder at the counter. The allocation was fixed before the market opened. Team supply, treasury, seed round, unlock calendar, all decided in a document written months earlier at a cost basis of approximately nothing. The circulating float is the prize pool. The insider allocation is the rake. Its only distinguishing feature is that it gets levied at the point of exit rather than the point of sale, extracted through liquidity rather than deducted from the pot. And the comparison does not run the way sentiment expects. The lottery's takeout is fixed, proportional, and certain. Around half of every pound has gone before a ball moves, and no decision available to you alters that by a penny. The token's takeout is variable and contingent on who exits, at what size, into whose bid. For the median participant, both instruments destroy capital. For the individual participant, the lottery is the more punishing of the two, because its loss is guaranteed by construction rather than merely overwhelming in probability. Sold across a shop counter with a license attached, an extraction rate that would end an exchange inside a week becomes a national institution with a charitable wing. Now the Pareto trap, where the comparison stops being structural resemblance and becomes identity. The ticket holder has one lever, which numbers to choose. It does nothing to the probability of matching 6, since every line is equiprobable and always will be. What it changes is the expected number of people you split the jackpot with, and selection is wildly non-uniform. Birthdays crowd everything into 1 through 31. Diagonal patterns get filled in on the slip by thousands of people, each believing they are being clever. 7 is chosen far above its share. The crowd concentrates itself into a small region of the combination space, and anyone standing outside that region holds a real, measurable, permanent advantage in how little they must share, rather than in whether they win. Consensus is a cost. Scale becomes weakness. Certainty becomes kindling. This is the trap operating in an instrument with no fundamentals, no narrative, and no information whatsoever, which tells you the trap was never about information in the first place. It was always about crowding. Being early to a token is that same lever, worn differently. It is a claim about how many people will be standing beside you at the exit, dressed as a claim about the asset. Efficiency reasserts itself in both venues by an identical route. A must-be-won draw is a genuine positive expected value window, a rollover forced down into the lower tiers, briefly worth playing. The window shuts as it opens, because the publicity that makes it worth playing drives the ticket volume that raises the co-winner count and drags expected value back under the waterline. The edge is arbitraged away by its own recognition, inside a single draw cycle, in a game with no analysts and no information. Anyone who has watched a narrative rotate through a token sector has seen that curve drawn in real time. Consider what Allwyn did in June. Every 2-pound line now enters 2 independent rounds. The chance of winning something improved from 1 in 9.3 to 1 in 4.9. The headline promised 200 extra millionaires a year at the same price. Read the prize table and the funding mechanism appears. Match 3 now returns £10. Match 2 returns £1. The lower tiers were cut to pay for the upper ones. Total takeout did not move. The claim on it was reallocated within the player pool, from the many who win small to the few who win enormous, then sold back to everyone as generosity. That is a supply schedule revision. Any treasury shipping it would call it a tokenomics upgrade, publish 3 charts, and be congratulated for aligning incentives. The two systems also differ in which component gets audited, and the difference runs against the lottery rather than for it. Token distribution is conducted in public and against its will. Every unlock, every treasury movement, every market maker's inventory sits on a ledger anyone can cluster and timestamp. The lottery requires no distribution phase because the extraction was legislated before the game ever reached the counter. Its accumulation phase concluded in Parliament. What remains available for auditing is the drum, the one component whose integrity was never in question. And the visible fairness of those tumbling balls is then quietly transferred to the fairness of the arrangement they sit inside. The randomizer is honest. The randomizer is also the only part nobody had reason to doubt. Follow that asymmetry to the payout, and it widens considerably. Every exit from a token market leaves a trace: a wallet, a timestamp, a route, a counterparty, permanent and public whether the seller wishes it or not. A lottery win leaves a bank transfer and an anonymity option. Claimants decline publicity by default. The operator publishes no counterparty, and the movement of a jackpot after it clears is observable by nobody outside the institutions that moved it. The mechanics of the game are published to 4 decimal places. The mechanics of the money are published nowhere. The marketing follows necessarily from all of it. When the base rate is the product, the winner becomes the only usable advertisement. The delivery driver from Wigan with an oversized check outside a Premier Inn. The anon who turned 400 quid into a house. You cannot build an intuition about 1 in 45 million from a photograph of a smiling man, because a photograph of a person is a sample of size 1, presented as though it were a sample of size everything. And both instruments draw hardest on those least able to absorb the loss. Lottery spend is roughly flat in cash terms across the income distribution, which is another way of saying it is steeply regressive as a share of what a household actually holds. £2 is a rounding error against a 6-figure salary and a real decision against a fortnightly universal credit payment. Token markets recruit from the same conviction for the same reason. The people who need an asymmetric outcome are the people with no other route to one. So the lottery is the altcoin market with the software removed and the arithmetic left face up on the table. Perfectly efficient between players, perfectly uncompetitive above them, perfectly crowded, perfectly regressive, negative sum by legislation, and settled in private. What it takes is documented exhaustively and defended constantly. Where that money travels once it has been taken, and who across the last 100 years has found a licensed, anonymous, state-guaranteed payout channel so extraordinarily convenient, is a different question entirely, and no prize table will answer it.